Welcome everyone to our webinar tonight on Ask the Expert, What Makes a Great Website. I'm joined tonight by Tylora from King Thing Marketing. And before we get into that, I'll give you an introduction to Business Tasmania. Before I commence, I would like to acknowledge the traditional, sorry, I'll start that again. Before I commence, I would like to acknowledge the Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the traditional owners of this land and pay my respects to elders past and present. My name is Bronwyn. I am the Program Manager of the Business Tasmania service, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of who we are at Business Tasmania and also share some of the wonderful support that we have available to you as a small business owner. So Business Tasmania primarily exists to make it easier for business to access government support, and the Business Tasmania service is a statewide, free and confidential service that's available to you. So we help businesses at all stages, from those who are just starting out, perhaps you have an idea, right through to those who are managing their business, and even those closing their business or looking to sell their business. We have a wide range of services to support you. The main offering we have is a phone line and a customer service line through email, through which businesses can ask any business-related question, and it's our job to connect you with the most suitable support available to you and provide referrals to other services and funding opportunities and advice services that are available to you. So we do offer a lot, and we also run a lot of events, just like this workshop, and we also have an event calendar on our website where we share all the events that we've brought together in one place for you to see from some of our other stakeholders and other government supported events. So that's just on our website, on our event calendar, and you can search by events in your area to see what's happening near you in person, and also online events like this one. We also have a range of services where you can get one-on-one support with advisors. So I'll dig into the Tasmanian Business Advice Service in a moment, and also how you can access digital mentors too. We have our website, the business.tas.gov.au website, where we have a whole host of information and tools and resources for you to access to help you manage your business and also to get started in business. So there's a great range of resources on there, and I highly encourage you to check it out. There's a lot of checklists and workbooks for you to work through when you need support. So the Tasmanian Business Advice Service is a free and confidential service where you can access support from an experienced business advisor. You get support that's tailored to your needs. So it's not like an online course where you get general advice. It's tailored to your questions and needs at the time, which is really fantastic. And depending on how long you've been in business, you can access one of two streams of the service. The first stream is the Tasmanian Business Advice Service, and that's for those who've had an ABN of 12 months or more. You get access to a pool of generalist advisors. A lot of them have been in business themselves and have some really great experience to share. And you can access up to 5 years of support per financial year. So those hours reset at the start of the new financial year. The second stream is for those who've had an ABN for 12 months or less, or those who may not have yet registered their ABN. That's the new business support service, and our advisors within this service help you get started. It may be support to register your ABN or help with those regulatory requirements in the first year of business. So through that service, you can access up to 2 hours per financial year. And you can meet in person or online with your advisor. We have advisors in every region across Tasmania. And if you are interested in signing up or seeing more about the service, you can head to the businessadvice.tas.gov.au website and fill out the form, and you'll get connected with the advisor. Or alternatively, you can call us at Business Tasmania, and one of our team will help you online to fill out the form and get you connected with an advisor. Okay, a few other programs that we quite often refer people to This one is Employer of Choice Assist. This is designed for businesses who employ staff. It enables you to access, again, free advice, to get tailored assistance when you want support with creating a positive workplace culture. So you can get support with things like attracting new employees, how to keep great employees, how to develop workplace policies and procedures, and much more. And again, this is all free. And the Employer of Choice Assist program sits alongside a program called the Employer of Choice Recognition Program, which I highly encourage you to look up if you do employ staff. The next service is also for people who employ people. So this is the Workplace Relations Helpline service. This helps you to navigate some of the employer obligations. I know it's really tricky to navigate the Fair Work Act, and it's time consuming and challenging. So the helpline is there for you to access one-on-one support immediately over the phone, and you can get support with things like compliance with the Fair Work Act. You can get support with employee awards, finding out what pay rates you should be using, and also your employees' leave entitlements. So this service again is free, and you can access it by calling Business Tasmania on our 1-800 number, and we can connect you directly to the advisor on the hotline. One last program I'd like to share with you is Digital Solutions Tasmania. So this is a program delivered by the Van Diemen Project through some federal funding, and it's a program which gives you access for up to 4 hours of advice one-on-one with a business coach or a digital coach. And this one isn't free, but it is a really good price at just $59 for the 4 hours. And they also host a great range of workshops and webinars and have a range of resources available online. And it's well worth checking out if you haven't already. So I'm sharing the Business Tasmania website with you because there's a few pages here I think are of interest to many of you. And the one I'd like to point out today is the funding and support page, which you'll see the link to right up in the top menu there. So here is where you'll find any new funding opportunities and a whole range of our support services on offer too. So this is where you'll find out about grants, which I know a lot of you are interested in. So I highly encourage you to check out that page quite regularly. And the other way that you can find out about new programs and grant programs is through our newsletter. So we release a weekly newsletter, which gives updates on programs, some of our partner organisations. We share their news as well. We share about events that are coming up and much, much more important updates for the small business community. So I highly encourage you to sign up to our newsletter. And yeah, this is how you can connect with us. So as I mentioned, we have our phone line. We also have our email address, which you can reach us by with any question, and just say that no question is too silly. We do our best to answer all of your questions. And you can also follow us on Facebook. So that's a quick overview of Business Tasmania and how we can help you with your business. And now I'd like to hand over to Tylora to share all about websites with us. Thanks, Tylora.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. Can we see those slides?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you everyone for coming and making time on a Wednesday evening to hear about what makes a great website. Tonight's session may be a little bit different to the ones that you've maybe participated in before. So the way it will work is that some questions were submitted as part of the registration process. And so I will read out the question that was asked, and then I will go through and answer that question. I do have some accompanying slides for those questions. And then if you do have questions, go through the processes that Bronwyn mentioned at the start about how you can ask a question, and you can do that throughout the presentation, or you can save them for the end as well. But my name's Tylora and I'm from King Thing Marketing. So we're a marketing agency based in Launceston, and this particular presentation is supported by the Department of State Growth. Before we begin, I would like to also honour the Tasmanian Aboriginal community, their elders past and present, and thank them for caring for the place we all call home. So we'll jump straight into it. So the first question is how to set up a website from scratch. So the very first thing that you need to do if you are new to the website game is to think about actually what that domain will look like. For some of us, we may already have that, but if we have just registered our business, perhaps we're still thinking about what does that domain look like? What's that business name? So it's ideal when we do choose our domain that we want to make sure it's relevant for our business, that it's easy for people to remember. Ideally, you probably do want it to be what your actual business name is, just to create that consistency. And then just determine whether or not you want to just be a .com, a .com.au, or a .au. Ideally, if you can, it's great to get all three of those domains and then just choose one of those to be your primary domain, and then you can still connect the others to the website. But it's just a really good idea to make sure that you've got that domain locked in, and so that you have that ready to go for your website. Some platforms in which you can purchase your domain include Crazy Domains, GoDaddy, Web Central. They're probably the key ones that I recommend here that have people that are based here in Australia, so that if we need to contact their support teams, we get to talk to somebody on the other end of the phone. So this is where I've just skipped ahead and said that without moving to the slide. Something to make note of is that when you are registering any .au domain, to input the correct ABN. Now, the reason for this is that if you were to go and change the ABN, or you've accidentally typed in the wrong number, you actually have to repay a higher fee than what the actual domain was worth in the first place to actually correct that, and it can cost up to $300 to fix that. So for something that where a domain is normally around $15.95, $20, around that sort of pricing, when you have to pay $300 because you've made a mistake on some numbers that you've inputted, it is really important when you are going through and registering your domain that you make sure that that ABN number is correct. So then the next thing is to think about, well, what's the right platform for my business and what's going to work for me? So I'm going to run you through a couple of different options in which you can choose from. So the first is WordPress. So this is probably one of the most popular platforms that websites are built on in the world. They have a couple of different ways in which you can build it. So there's different themes that you can choose from. It allows you to be able to change the design easily when you have a WordPress website. There's different plugins that you can get to add different functionality to your website. It's relatively easy to update depending on the template that you've set up and how you've set up your WordPress website. If it was completely custom coded, then it may be trickier, but there are things that we can do to at least be able to easily update content and change images as needed. And in particular, we know that Google loves WordPress websites. So if we're looking to be found in that Google search, having a WordPress website can be really handy for that, because there has been some research done to say that the Google algorithm really does like WordPress websites. Some other popular platforms include Squarespace. So Squarespace offers a huge selection of professional templates. It's a really easy to use system. Because it is more template based, it doesn't have as much creativity in terms of adding different shapes and textures, although I will say it has gotten better because you can add different shapes and lines that are not just straight to the platform. It also lets us see what the website would look like if we were the customer. So when we're editing it and changing the text and changing the photos, we know exactly how it will then appear to the customer. You can also edit for mobile view versus desktop view. It has its own inbuilt analytics. All the features are built in, so you don't have to purchase additional plugins. And it does include its own hosting and website security. So when you pay for your Squarespace subscription each year, it's around $325 a year for the business plan in Australian dollars, and that will include the full website hosting and then your security certificate, which is just a little lock symbol that shows on your website URL so that people know that your website's safe and secure. They also have a really great support via live chat and email so that you are able to ask them questions and be able to help build your website a little bit more. There is also some new AI features which lets us build our websites through AI just by answering a couple of questions around our brand and what our business has to offer. Squarespace also has e-commerce capabilities, and I will say they are improving all the time. Squarespace is actually one of the website platforms that I build on for some of my clients. And as I say, they do have e-commerce capabilities and they are always improving them all the time. So it is a good option if you are in that space. However, if you are also in the e-commerce space and you're looking for probably one of what I would refer to as the better e-commerce platforms in the market at the moment, Shopify is definitely a great solution. So it is a little bit more expensive than Squarespace, and the pricing is in US dollars, but it does have some great functionality in terms of it syncing with your Facebook and Instagram shopping, your Google shopping ads. You can add different app features that allow us to notify customers when stock's available, do pre-orders, emails, in terms of like reviews, reward systems. The list is honestly endless. It also is great for those of us who might have a bricks and mortar site because you can actually offer Shopify POS in your store and then have Shopify as your online store so that they actually talk to each other and you can keep your stock levels updated through that system without having to manually take them off the website if you've sold something in your shop. It's also really easy for staff to use, whether it's on the POS or on the actual back end of the website when they are packing those orders. Another platform that's very similar to Squarespace is Wix. So it's a template-based system again. It has a bunch of built-in features and apps for you to be able to use. It also offers that hosting and website security as part of its package. And the SEO tools. They also have live customer support. To be honest, I find Wix and Squarespace are really similar, and it often comes down to personal preference about whether or not they like the grid drag and drop format of Squarespace or if you prefer the drag and drop format of Wix. So I would suggest if you haven't played around with both and you're determining which website platform might be better out of those two, even do a demo on each one and just see which one you prefer the feel of when you are actually making those edits. So that's just a couple of the different platforms out there that you can explore and see what works best for your business. Just some things to consider when you are choosing the best platform is what is that ease of use looking like? So is it a website platform that you can manage yourself or will you need a developer? What's that scalability like with that platform? So will this platform grow with your business or is it going to be maybe an interim solution and then in a couple of years you might look at building something completely different as your business grows? Probably one of the most important things is if you want it to integrate with some of your other marketing tools that you are utilizing, make sure that it has that integration feature. Most of these will be able to do that, but it is always great to just double check and ensure that that works in the way in which you would like it to. And then probably most importantly is just look at the cost of each one. So what do those monthly fees look like? What are the transaction costs and any additional expenses, particularly with things like Shopify or WordPress? They do have plugins that can cost. So it is a good idea to make sure that you have a good understanding about what sort of apps you might be looking to use or plugins to use, and then get a true, I guess, reflection of what that value of that website will be each year to continue running it. So there's just a couple of things to consider when you're picking your platform. And when you're doing your research, each of the website platforms will tell you what some of those pricing, what that pricing looks like, so that you can make your decisions easier. So once you've determined what platform you're going to build on, it's then important to start thinking about, well, what will that website actually look like? And so the way in which we encourage you to do that is to actually map out your website pages. So I like to do it just in a spreadsheet and I kind of map out what the navigation would look like as if I was a customer looking at the top of my website. So I'll have my home page, I'll have an about folder that has drop downs to some other pages, performance studio with some nutrition, training, timetable. So you can just see here we've got a bit of different, we've got some different options on there as to how we would actually map it out. And this is going to help you going forward because you'll be able to make sure that in a Word document, you have written content that would go on each of these pages. each of these pages. It's also particularly helpful if you have decided to work with a web developer to build your website, because then you're both on the same page about how many pages you actually want to have on your website and how you would like that to look and feel. So then the next step, once you've got that plan, as I say, is to actually start writing your content. It is much easier to have your written content done first, because that's going to make you then see how much information you have to go on that particular page, and you can make the design fit around that content. So make sure you think about what information do you need to share. Maybe you even start with some dot points for each of those pages that you've got, and then start to flesh the content out. This is where tools such as AI can come in handy to help us really start to formulate some of our written copy, and then kind of edit over it just to make sure it has your tone of voice and it talks to the customers that are your target audience. And then at the same time, it is a really great idea to make sure that you've got images and video to go on each of those pages. So we want those images and those videos to actually showcase the business and what it is that you're talking about in the content on those pages. Make a decision as to whether or not you want to hire a professional and get somebody in to take those shots, or maybe you just know someone who is really great with a camera, might even be yourself, and actually start taking those images on your phone and making sure that they are in that landscape format for a website rather than that vertical format that we're typically used to when it comes to social media. Make sure that we're thinking about how our images showcase diversity and inclusiveness, and also your business story, because that's the most important thing that we want to portray through those images and videos. And videos, if possible, can be really great to have on your website because they can help create more of an emotive connection, so that people then might like to book your service or purchase your products. So that's a little bit about how you can start your website from scratch. So the next question was, is it necessary to pay a web developer, or can I build a website myself? So it's really up to the individual as to whether or not they have the time and the resources to be able to do it, and whether or not they feel like they have the capacity or the capability to be able to build it themselves. So building it yourself can be really great if you are running a small business or a side hustle. You've got a little bit of time where you're happy to kind of learn and experiment with different website platforms to find one that you feel comfortable with using, and you know that you'll be able to make the changes necessary. And that's where it can be good to look at some of the ones that I mentioned, like Squarespace or Wix, or even Shopify if you're an e-commerce business, that have templates so that they're a little bit easier to set up. They've got the bones there set up for us from a design perspective. We're just changing the photos and videos to be our own. We're adding our own logo, fonts, and text. So the pros to building it yourself is it obviously is more cost effective. You're just paying for that hosting and domain, and maybe a theme if you wanted to purchase a specific theme that's not part of the free choices on, say, Shopify or WordPress. You've also got greater control because you're able to make those changes anytime without waiting. So you'll start to feel more confident on how to actually make those changes going forward. The downside to it is that it can be sometimes often quite time consuming. So there's a little bit of a learning curve even with drag and drop builders. So it does take a little bit of time and practice to get that down. Obviously, if you work with a web builder, they are going to be a little bit faster because it is what they do every day. So it's just about weighing up whether or not you want to invest in your time as a like in your time to be able to actually build it, or if it's actually worth putting some money behind it and getting somebody else to do it. And then often with some of those more simple template-based platforms, we are limited in our customization. So if you really want some advanced features or a very specific design, that can be a little bit tricky to actually do in some of those build-it-yourself platforms. Sometimes not impossible, but it might take a little bit longer for you to be able to do that, or it might not be possible. And you may need to actually contact a web developer to set that up. If you're thinking about hiring a developer, this is a really good idea if you're thinking of launching a more complex website. So for example, maybe you've got a specific type of membership, booking, or e-commerce with custom features that you want to have set up. If you're really short on time, or you don't have the capacity to actually invest into learning how to do the website build, and you just want to focus on what it is that you love and enjoy doing, it can be really worth hiring a web developer. It's also important if you want something completely unique or brand aligned that has some really unique features, that you probably look at a developer, because they would need to code some of those features to the website. So the pro around a developer is that they can customize that design and functionality. They can give it that professional polish, and often some of them can also do that SEO setup, which we will talk about SEO a little bit later, but that stands for search engine optimization and your ability to be found in a Google search. And quite often they can also offer ongoing support depending on your arrangement, or at least they can be there so that if you forget how to do something when you've been provided some training on your website, you can call them and say, hey, I know I did some training around this, but how do I do this? Just to get a bit of a refresher and feel like you've got a support network that's on the ground. Obviously, the cons around hiring a developer is that it is more expensive. So it normally costs a few $1,000s to tens of $1,000s, depending on the complexity of the website that you're wanting to build. And you do often have a little bit of less control in terms of paying for some updates. So some businesses will make you pay for every little small update that they're doing onto the website. Others might put you on a subscription package where they'll do those updates for you each month, or potentially, it just depends what your arrangement is. So just make sure if you do go down this track, you understand what it looks like if you do want to make those small updates, or if training is provided to you to learn how to make updates. So the next question was website versus social platforms. So it's probably one of my favorite questions that I love to get asked, but it is always important to, where we can, try and have both, because ultimately they do work best together. Social media is ideal for attracting our target customers and having a conversation with them, but we want to use our social media to get them across to our website, because our website is where we're ultimately going to get them to convert. And that conversion could be through a sale of a product, or it could be to book into a service or join one of our membership plans. So it's a great way to be able to make sure that we've got everything covered as part of that journey that we know customers are on. So the other thing to think about is that your website is your digital home. So it's an asset that you own, and it's all about you. So it's a way for you to make sure that you can showcase your brand and your business and show people that you are a serious person within this field of expertise. You don't have to worry about algorithms. All you need to worry about is getting people to your website. You don't have to worry that potentially maybe a Facebook might go down overnight and you lose your entire database, because you've got people that can find your website and they're able to then be able to engage you in your services or buy your products. If you are an e-commerce business, it's a way for us to build more trust, and same when it comes to bookings or service-based businesses. Probably one of the most powerful things, though, is that it allows us to be found in that Google search. Unfortunately, social media doesn't help as much here from an SEO perspective. While it is getting better and we can start to implement keywords into some of our social media strategies, we do not have as much control in terms of really, I guess, asking Google, this is what we want to be found for, by setting up those SEO features on our website. So the best way to think about it is that while Facebook and Google are friends in the playground, they're not going to be best of friends. And where they can, Google will always prioritize a website before they prioritize a social media page. Your website is also that central hub. So it's where you can have your social media pages, you can have your emails, all your ads can come to here. So it's basically the one place that you send all of your advertising to, that you want them to go to your website and learn more information as much information as possible about your business, so that it actually does create that conversion. Whereas social media is more about whether people discover you or they have a conversation with you. So it's really great for reach and visibility, especially if you are posting content or running ads. It's really easy to update people. So if you've got a new product or you've got a new promotion, you can actually post about that instantly and tell people about that offer. Again, though, when you do that, that's going to then encourage them to want to go to the website and find out more information and take that next action. It's also great for engagement, so we can build relationships, get feedback, and show your brand personality, which we can do through our websites, through our written content, but it obviously is a little bit harder because we're not consistently posting updates like we would on social media, like on a website. Probably the biggest downside to social media, though, is that we don't own the platform. So basically, you're building something on rented land. If overnight Meta or TikTok changes their policies, shuts down your account, or limits your reach, you can lose access to your followers overnight. And that can be really detrimental for some businesses. So we want to make sure that while we have our social media and we love our social media, we want to be also having things like our websites and an email marketing list so that we can always have some customers that are our own, that we own, and don't have to worry about third-party data coming into play and taking over and ruining what it is that we've built. The next question is, what web design trend do you think is overrated or even harmful to user experience? And what web design technique do you think is underrated and should be used more? I thought this was a great question. And rather than just picking one, I've just done a list of some of my, I guess, some web design trends that I think are overrated, and then some web design trends that are underrated for this. So some of the overrated trends include videos that are greater than 15 seconds. Now, the reason for this is that they slow down your website page speed. And we know people get frustrated when a website doesn't load. So if you've got a really long video that goes for a couple of minutes on your homepage of your website, it can cause people to not be able to load your website fast. They might then get disinterested, and then they might jump onto another competitor's website because they were over waiting for that to load. Probably one of my least favorite trends is having a desktop website that just has a mobile type menu. So that's where you would have what I refer to as a hamburger menu. And so it's just the little 3 lines. It works beautifully for mobile, but if I'm on the desktop, I want to see at the top the navigation up there nice and clearly so I can see what tab I want to click on and find the page of information that I'm looking for. I think sometimes we try to get too fancy by not having these navigation menus, and then people just get lost because they don't know where they're meant to click or find the information that they're looking for in an easy manner. Something that I'm seeing more and more of from a trend perspective is this thing where if you scroll, it does some really fancy scroll behavior and it might open up and then it might lead to another part of the website. Some of those can be done really well, and I do love those, but there are some that can be often confusing. You're not really sure where you're going, and then you're trying to get back and you can't get back. So it is important, if you do decide to do any of that fancy scroll on your website, that you do just limit and make sure that it is easy for the customer to either get to where they need to go or even go back to where they were. And then the other trend that I find a little bit overrated is testimonial and gallery pages. I think this is a bit of an outdated approach, and it is better to actually have these throughout your website, as people don't want to see a page of them. They kind of want to see them throughout your website where it might relate to a product or service that you're talking about. Maybe it's on your homepage, you have some of those testimonials. And then throughout your site, you should have really great imagery so that it paints a picture no matter what landing page they're on, rather than just having one page to tell that story. So on the flip side, some underrated trends that I think are important to consider are having clear call to action buttons. We want to make sure that there are as many action buttons as possible so that if somebody only likes a little bit of information, they can click on a button and go to take the action that you need them to take. Or if they're a person that needs to read more information, rather than making them having to scroll back up to the top, we have another button at the bottom of that long piece of information for them to click through and take them to where they need to go. It's also important to make sure that we have clear visual headings for users to scan and find what they are looking for faster. We know when people are on a website, they read in what is referred to as an E format. So they're basically looking through the headlines of the website and skimming them to see, does that headline have information about a question that I've got or the problem that I'm having, and do they have the information there to solve it? So we want to utilize those headings to really call out what that piece of text is, so that it makes it easier for the user to scan and find what they're looking for faster. Don't be afraid of the usage of white space. It is so important for people to have white space around content and not have everything jammed together, so that they can actually digest that content. If everything is put together too closely, sometimes it can feel really overwhelming, and you're not actually sure what it is that you're reading or what action it is that you're needing to actually take. So where possible, try and make sure we've got a bit of breathing room and have that white space as part of that website. Readable typography. So it's important to have text that's not too thin, it's not grey on white, it's just clean, legible text. It's amazing how many businesses honestly lose users just because they've made their site so stylish, but it's unreadable. So we can have these really fancy fonts, these really amazing colors, but if they're not readable to everybody and they're not accessible, it just isn't going to get people actually using the website in the way in which we would like them to. And then another underrated trend is mobile first design. So it's really important that we prioritize performance over those fancy visuals, because we want people to be able to find the information and actually take action, rather than just being caught up in the fancy features and getting overwhelmed and not being on our website and taking the action that we're asking them to. So there were a lot of questions that came through the information box around SEO, and as you could imagine, SEO is a huge topic, and one that I could talk about for hours on end. So what I've tried to do is just pull in the key pieces of information around SEO that were asked, and tried to keep it quite short so that we weren't sitting here all night. But if you do want to learn some more information around SEO, there are some videos from that the digital support program has recorded and filmed, that you're able to access through the Business Tas website, I believe, so that you can actually sit down and watch them in your own time and learn a little bit more information about SEO. So the question was, is SEO still important? So to begin with, I thought it was important to just call out, for those of us who might not be familiar with the term, what is SEO? So SEO stands for search engine optimization, and the way that I like to explain it is that it's basically our ability to be found in the Google search. We know that when people have a problem, they don't go and just be like, oh, what's that problem, to a friend. They often jump on Google or on ChatGPT and they ask them, how do I solve this problem? And so we then want to make sure that our website is turning up for those searches that relate to that problem that we can solve for those people. And so we could solve that problem through our product or our service, and we just want to make sure that we are turning up in those features. So yes, SEO is still important. While people are starting to utilize things like AI drives a lot of its SEO searches through that Google search, particularly if you're using things like Gemini, but also because it's looking at articles through the website and looking at some of that SEO data when they're looking at that through the AI chat tools as well, or the AI bot tools, sorry. We also know people are still utilising Google, so if they're looking for the best gift for dad, or eco-friendly knitwear, or wine tasting Tama Valley, Google is often still their first stop, so we do want to make sure that we're still being compatible for that. Unlike social media, which is fleeting and algorithm dependent, SEO brings sustained, consistent traffic, because it is for a search term that we know people are consistently searching for when they're looking for our product or service. And it often tends to lead to more conversions straight away. So with social media, it's more about creating that community and having that conversation, where when people are on Google, they've quite often got in their mind that they need to book that service or they need to buy that product. So when they are doing that search, they want something. And so we're able to provide them that by having our website turn up in that search engine when they're doing that search. It also builds long-term equity. So when we run paid ads on social media or on even Google ads, it stops the minute you pause that budget because you're no longer spending money. Whereas SEO is actually a free thing that we can utilize on the back of our websites, and it will just keep sitting there and keep ranking for months or years, just with those occasional updates that we might do to make sure that we're keeping Google happy and the AI side of things happy now that that's come into play. And so by us doing that, we're actually helping feed what I refer to as the bigger beast. And so over time, our websites are going to get rewarded for that. And then we're going to be making sure that we're turning up in those searches that we know people are doing. I think the most important to know though when it does come to SEO that it has definitely changed a lot. So it is certainly in 2025 less about keyword stuffing and more about user intent. So understanding why someone is searching. So it is so important, and we'll talk about it in the next question, to really understand those keywords or key phrases that people are searching when they're looking for your product or service, or what problems it is that we can solve for your target customers. It's also important to not only be able to solve that through our product or service, but even have helpful content on our website that answers their questions or helps them utilize that product or service down the track. So making sure that we prioritize our content around that. We also want to make sure that we have fast, mobile-friendly websites, because that is something that comes into play when we look at our SEO and how we set up our strategies around that. And then we also want to make sure that we offer experience, expertise, authoritative, and trustworthiness through the content that's actually on our website. So we want to showcase to people that we can do each of these things so that it tells the Google spiders that this is what we're wanting to be found for, because we do have the experience, the expertise, and the trustworthiness to be able to deliver this to people. So how do you actually optimize your website for SEO? So as I mentioned before, one of the most important things that you need to do, first of all, is to actually figure out what your customers are searching for. So use tools such as the Google Keyword Planner, Ubersuggest, or WordStream to actually do some research and see what people are looking for when it comes to your product or service. Have a think about what are some, other questions that they might ask around that product or service, and maybe it's not directly asking, but it can lead them to actually looking for the product and service that you're offering. So it is important to just brainstorm as many ideas as possible and then use these tools to actually see what are the number of searches that are happening each month. So just to give you an example of what this looks like, this is a tool we use called Web CEO. And so we can search in here to say accommodation in Hobart. And so then it will come back and tell us 40,500 people search that per month. But there's also some other options that you could consider that people are also searching for. So if you don't want to use accommodation in Hobart, perhaps you could use the key phrase places to stay in Hobart, Hobart places to stay, accommodation, Hobart CBD. So you start to see that there's other ways in which we can frame it. You'll also notice that a lot of them might have similar search results, and that could be because no matter how you kind of take the wording and reformat it, it's still going to provide the same or similar results through that Google search. So it just gives us a better understanding as to how we can actually formulate those words, so we're not feeling like we're having to repeat it in the same sentence and structure. But then what are some keywords that are actually worth utilizing? And then maybe what are some ones that aren't worth utilizing because maybe they don't have any searches like we think that they do. And while this is great, something that I will note is that this is a lot of searches per month. So 40,500 searches is a lot of searches per month, which means that it often has a lot of other businesses also trying to compete with that particular key phrase. And so if we are a new business and we haven't ever had any SEO strategy on our websites, it does make it a little bit harder to compete in that space. So then it might be worthwhile thinking about, well, what are some other features that my accommodation offers that people might be searching for to make it a bit more specific and actually get my website noticed, rather than just being lost on page 20 of the Google search that we know sometimes people won't even go through to. So this is where we might get a little bit more specific and say 2-bedroom apartments in Hobart. It has 320 local monthly searches. So it's still a really good high volume number of searches. That would be great if we could convert some of those. We'd be better off to be able to utilize that as our key phrase on our website, because we're more likely to show up on the first 2 pages of Google if we use that keyword versus the one that has 40,000 searches. So what we're doing with that keyword research is we're not only identifying the keywords that are worth using, that people are actually searching, but we're also picking ones that we know are actually going to get us towards the front of those pages on the Google search, rather than being stuck on page 20 where no one's actually going to see us. So once you've determined your keywords, we then need to think about actually setting up some on-page SEO. So this is where we would optimize our content through our page titles, our headings. So these are features that are quite often built into our website platform. So all of this is available in the website platforms that I mentioned previously, even if you do need to add a free plugin to be able to add that to the website. You also want to think about adding the keywords to the text. So where practical, try and repeat that key phrase at least 3 times throughout the whole website copy on that particular page. And then you want to write the catchy meta titles and descriptions onto Google. So this will actually tell Google what it is that the keyword is that we want to use, and then a little bit of a sentence there around what that page is about. So it's a bit of a summary so that people can read that and know that if they click through to that website URL, it's going to give them more information about that. And then adding our image alt text. Now, as I mentioned, normally I would go through this in a lot more detail about how you would actually use these keywords to optimize your content, but it would actually take most of this presentation. So I have really skimmed over this, and do encourage you, if you want to learn how to do this, to go and watch some of those other videos around how to actually set up SEO for your websites. Some other things to think about from an SEO perspective is to create content on your website, such as a blog. And this is where you could write some articles answering customer questions. So quite often when we do our keyword research, we come across a number of questions that people ask that might relate to our product or service, and we would love to be able to answer and get them to our website through that way. And so we can actually do that through a blog page on our website, because each blog can be SEO'd for that particular question that's been asked. It also shows our expertise, which we know Google really likes, because it shows that trustworthiness and helps build that credibility as a business. And it also gives Google that fresh content. So the more things that we have new on our website, Google really appreciates that, because it can see that we're being active and we're trying to make changes so that people can find our websites and actually answer the questions that they might have. And then the other SEO strategy to think about is linking. So there's 3 types of links that you can have. So the first are internal links. So this is where you would link from different pages of your website to each other. So maybe on your home page, you have a bit about you, and then that actually leads out to an about us page. So it's just thinking about how you can make sure you have as many internal links as possible to other pages on your website to encourage people to spend more time on your site and read all of the information that's on offer to them. The next link, which is probably one of your most powerful forms of links, is external links. Oh, sorry, this is not the, sorry, I'll go back. External links. So these are ones on your website. So these aren't your most powerful ones. I do apologize. I've said that around the wrong way. So our external links are ones that are on our website, and maybe I'll use an example of an accommodation business. They might have a things to do in the area page, and on that page they talk about some other tours that you can go on, and for the name of that tour they might then hyperlink out to that website so you can find out more information and book. So that can be really great, because you can link out to other people's website and drive some traffic to them, but also keep them on your own website whilst they've gone and viewed that other information. So then potentially they'll come back and hopefully book you if you're at that accommodation. But your third most powerful type of linking is backlinks. So this is where we get other really great websites to link back to yours. So this basically tells Google that your website is valuable, the content that you have on there is amazing, and so we want to make sure that then other people are finding that information. The most important thing with backlinks, though, is that they do need to be genuine. So back in the day, you used to be able to go and purchase thousands of backlinks for your website so that it could help build from an SEO perspective. That's now actually not what we do, because Google can recognize that they're not genuine backlinks. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're only getting links to our website from websites that are seen as credible. So these are things like government websites or websites that already have high traffic volume and that uses a trusted resource already. So we want to make sure that we're getting those people to link back to us, so that then it helps improve our website performance. And then lastly, from an SEO perspective, is to make sure that we make Google happy. So make sure we set up the free Google business profile, connect Google Analytics to our website, and connect the Google Search Console to our website. All of these are free Google tools for us to utilize, and each has different, functionality that they can do alongside adding to your website, but they all talk hand in hand to each other and make Google happy, which will then also prioritize you in that SEO search because you're doing the right thing by them. So the next question was, how does AI affect SEO? So AI is definitely changing SEO in two ways. So the first is that in the way in which we generate content, and then the way in which we search/prompt content. AI tools certainly help with ideas, outlines, and drafts. So your role as a person is to always edit, fact check, and add your unique touch. So it's there to help you, but it doesn't replace you. But the way in which Google uses AI is to understand complex searches. So it's where if you're writing naturally, like talking to a customer, and answers questions completely, they're more likely to see that and then start to say, well, these guys seem to know what they're talking about, and maybe we should pull those answers into our AI and what we're spitting out to people. So the way in which we can actually make sure that AI is picking up what we have on our own website, so that when people are doing those searches, is to actually be conversational on our website pages. So the human voice is an absolute advantage. So AI can sound robotic. And so if people are actually writing like themselves, Google are actually going to favor that. And they're going to prioritize that human sounding content because they want it to come through that way on the AI, so that it doesn't feel like it's written by a robot. We want to write conversationally, so use contractions, so can't instead of cannot, ask questions, have that friendly tone so that it feels like it has been written by a person and actually feels real and genuine. And you can add your personality, so let your brand's unique voice shine. Tell the story so people connect with people. So make sure you share some of those stories that people might find funny or unique, and maybe add in some testimonials so that they can see that it's not just you telling that story. There's other people out there that are having that experience and being able to really tie into that overarching brand narrative that you have. By being genuine and relatable, it can also help AI see that and say, oh, wow, these people really are being genuine about what they're talking about. Let's prioritize them. And then credit the author, so link their bio and in any other content through that conversation. So the thing with AI is that while it is important that we know it exists, and SEO is definitely there as part of it, we want to make sure that in order for us to get picked up through those AI bots, we're actually creating content that is conversational and written by a human, so that it actually picks it up and starts to serve it to people through that AI tool. So the next question is, what is essential to attract genuine traffic to your website? So in order to attract traffic to your website, you need a strategic mix of visibility, value, and trust building marketing activities. So this is where you would make sure you set up things such as strong SEO. You would also have clear, compelling messaging. So tell people who you are, what you do, and why it matters. Speak your audience's language. So don't try and use industry jargon. It can just go over people's heads. We want to be at their level, talking in the words that they like to hear and making it as easy as possible for them to understand. Have as much content as you can that solves problems. So whether it's a blog post or a guide or a how-to, think, what would my ideal customer Google at 11 p.m. when they need help? And how can I make sure that I've got that resource there for them to be able to answer that question? Use your email list to drive traffic, returning traffic with offers, updates, or stories about your business. Share your content across relevant social channels with engaging captions, and then retarget site visitors to keep your brand top of mind through some paid ads on social media. So how do I know if my website is easy for visitors to use? So the best way to do this is to actually put yourself in the customer's shoes, or to get some friends and family to put themselves in the customer's shoes. And this way you might even ask 3 to 5 people to complete tasks and ask them questions like, what would bring them to the site? So what, again, are those things that they're searching for if they were looking to find your product or service? Once they get to the website, does it feel trustworthy? Is it easy to navigate and find the information that they might be looking for? And maybe you might task them with some sort of information that they could potentially be looking for to see how long it takes them to find it. Does it offer something that they actually want or need based off what they were actually searching for in the first place? And is it easy to buy something or book a service? If it's too complex, why is it complex? What can we do to improve it? If we actually go through and do this research ourselves and getting other people that we might know to be able to help us do that as well, we're going to come back with a bit of a list about some things that we can actually do to help improve our website user experience, which is not only going to make it better for, which is going to actually make it better for our customers in the long run. The next question is, what are the best accessibility practices for a website? So these are just a couple of things so that we can make sure that we're accessible for all people. So the first is to make sure that we add descriptive alt text to images. So alt text not only has a component when it comes to keywords and SEO, but it's also really important for those that have immersive e-readers to be able to understand what that image is that is on the website. So we can actually add in the back end of our websites what they refer to as alt text to actually describe to people what that image looks like, so that they can utilize that functionality. It's also important to think of things when we've got buttons to say, instead of just saying like click here or read our guide to instead of click here, to use language that's a bit more descriptive, such as read our guide to Tasmanian wines or book your consultation now. The text should also have strong contrast against its background. So we want the text to actually stand out against the background that it's on. We also want to ensure that it has keyboard accessibility. So the best way to do that is, if you're on a web page, see if you can actually tab through your site using only your keyboard, so not using your mouse at all. If you can't, then we need to make sure that we've set it up so that you are able to do that. In the back of our websites, not only can we add different headings to our page, they refer to these as heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, and so on. While this to some people might be just related to the size, it actually has a greater feature around accessibility and SEO. So the way that a website and our screen readers will actually read things is that it will look for those heading 1s first, and then it will look for heading 2s, heading 3s. And so it'll read out people based on those informations to try and find them that information as quickly as possible. So it's actually more important to have our headings used in that way rather than around actually doing it for just bolding text. When we do have forms on our websites, we want to make sure that every form input, like name, email, message, has a really clear, visible label, and it's really easy to understand what information it is that you're asking them to put into there. And then if you want to be accessible for different types of languages, you actually have that Google Translate built into your website, or other tools such as Weglot, so that people can flick between the different languages and read the information in that language. I think this is the last question. So how many lines of menus should a website have? Now, this is a great question, but best practice is to have 1 line of a primary navigation. So that's just 1 single row of a main navigation across the top of your website, as that's best from a usability perspective. The reason for this is that it keeps the design clean, uncluttered, and mobile friendly. If you do have different pages on your website, you can utilize things such as drop downs or mega menus. And so you would have noticed back when I was looking at that page plan, I might have had a darker menu item at the top and then some lighter colored pages underneath. That was basically to symbolize that I'm going to have a tab at the top called About, and then underneath that, I'm going to have a page that says our history and our team, and they're going to go out to different pages, but it's going to help tidy up the website so that's really clear and easy to find the information that I'm looking for, and group related pages together so that people know that that's a similar theme of pages. If you need to and you've still got too much when you go across that way, you could also consider a secondary top bar. So above the logo or the footer menu, you could also add some other menu pages there so that maybe they're not on that main navigation, but they're available in those other areas for people to find. One thing is if you have your top navigation, it starts to wrap into 2 lines on the desktop. It can be really messy or hard to scan, and then people try to, especially if they've got drop downs, hover over it and they don't know where to click, or it clicks through to a page that they weren't actually wanting to go to. So yes, try and make sure that you do only have that 1 line of primary navigation. And that's the end of tonight's presentation. Are there any questions?
Fantastic. Thank you, Tylora. It was very informative. We do have one question in the chat, but if anyone else would like to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand or pop it in the Q&A box. So I'm going to pose this one to you, Tylora, but it may be one that you might like to take offline because it is quite specific. So the question is, I have a WordPress website. Sometimes I get messages to say to update it. Once when I did this, I lost everything and had to pay to get it fixed. When I get a message to tell me to update, how do I know whether it's safe? I can't afford to keep paying out for repairs, which is also time consuming. How would you suggest someone approaches this?
Yeah, so great question. So with WordPress websites, a lot of them do rely on plugins, which is what it would probably be asking for us to update. And so quite often when we do those updates, it can cause things to break on our website, which means we then have to get them fixed. So the best practice is to make sure that we back up our old website first when we are doing this, so that we know that if we need to, we can go back to that. But also looking at, well, when you do update it, what other things might it affect, or maybe when you do update it, go and do a bit of an overview on the website. It is one of those trickier things that are harder to be able to control and not be able to get assistance with, because you do want to update it so that it is being compliant and it is loading fast for your customers. So it's kind of about finding that balance, but maybe looking at, is it actually an important thing to update now? Can I wait a little bit? But if it starts to affect the page speed or the experience for the customer, then it's probably worth the investment to actually make sure that that's updated. And if you're struggling with that, to actually get somebody to help you with that.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, do we have any other questions? I can't see any hands, Tyler, or any other questions in the Q&A box. So just like to say thank you very much for coming along and sharing all about websites with us. There's some really great tips in there. So yeah, really appreciate your time, Tyler. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me.